Hi, this is Karen from the Mindful Earthkeeper. Today's topic for the week is harmonizing with the present and working with imperfect passions. Happy Valentine's Day for those of you who celebrate Valentine's Day. And today, this topic of imperfect passions might work very well for you on this Valentine's Day, depending on how your life is going. Today, we're going to be talking about an approach to becoming more sustainable and creating more joy and harmony in your life every day, not just on Valentine's Day. And I'm going to be sharing an approach to harmonizing our imperfect passions. And I want to start by identifying what it means to have imperfect passions, and I think we all have them, and why they can be a key to creating more harmony in our lives, more joy, and then again, being more sustainable. And so let's start out by saying, what is an imperfect passion? I'm reading some notes just in case you're wondering why I'm looking over. Um, Imperfect passions are those activities that we do because we enjoy them. They're things that bring us pleasure and happiness, and they're often the things in our lives that we've been doing all of our lives. Uh, they can be something like one of mine is food, and I think from an early age I've loved food as a pleasure, and maybe for you it's something else. When we refine our imperfect passions, we can also become more sustainable. We refine our imperfect passions by noticing what I call harmony points and harmony boundaries. And this is probably something you've been doing throughout your whole life. You balance out the different passions that you have. And sometimes what happens is that we only focus on one of our passions and then we let the others go. Or we get so caught up in our life goals that we forget that imperfect passions make us a whole person. And I want to say this, imperfect passions are not usually our life goals, though sometimes they can be, and some people build a whole business around an imperfect, what I would call an imperfect passion. Now, how do you define what an imperfect passion is? And I want to share an example from my experience. Maybe it's a silly example, but I first started to become aware of the idea of acknowledging and claiming my own imperfect passions, maybe in an unlikely way. And I remember this happening probably in the 1990s. It might have been the 2000s. I don't know. But somewhere along the line, I was reading something and came across a quote from the philosopher Erasmus. I had read In Praise of Folly in high school. I knew he was a famous philosopher. I knew what his philosophy was, more or less. And the quote that I remember that I was something about enjoying food, clothes, and books, and not necessarily in that order. And so that was kind of how I remembered it. And when I went to look at the exact quote, just to be clear this week, this is what I found. When I have a little money, I buy books. And if I have any left, I buy food and clothes. And that actually is very similar to how I used to be. Um, and what's interesting about my discovering of that quote was that it weirdly made me happy to realize that this famous person that I respected in some way enjoyed some of the same things that I did. And somehow that little quote gave me permission to like what I like and to have the passions that I have as imperfect passions. And I want to say this to you, give yourself permission to like what you like. Notice what your imperfect passions are. I also want to clarify that I think imperfect passions are different than life goals or toxic passions. Imperfect passions can contribute to our life goals, but they're usually not our life goals. A life goal is something like wanting to get married, wanting to retire early, um, wanting to get healthier and stay healthier. Imperfect passions are a little different than that. Now, you can create a business around an imperfect passion. People do that, but most of us don't. And the reason I'm calling these imperfect passions rather than just passions, it's because if we don't have boundaries around these passions, they become unhealthy, or they can become unhealthy. Toxic passions are those things we should just not do. For instance, if you're an alcoholic, drinking is unhealthy for you, you shouldn't do it. And you can think of things that might be toxic for you that you just shouldn't do. But we're talking about imperfect passions here. Having no boundaries around imperfect passions can lead us to addiction. And that's something we don't want to have, but often we do. um, if you look at the United States, about 60% of the people in the United States are overweight. So I would say that we all have some food issues to deal with. And that has to do with, I think, not acknowledging the imperfect passion and what are our harmony points and our harmony boundaries around different passions. And I'll be teaching this process next week in a Harmony for Life workshop next Wednesday. I tried to make this very low cost for people to experience the Harmony for Life experience without having to go through the whole thing, which we will be doing in the retreats this year, as well as maybe some other class in April. Um, we will build upon that throughout the year. So it's not just going to be one retreat. My idea for this year is that we are introducing ideas about the Song of Life in the beginning of the year, including the list that I gave you about restorative living, take the slow turtle steps every day, the guiding song. Now we're adding Imperfect Passions, and then we'll be doing some recalibrating in the when it comes to the equinox, and then we'll just keep building on this. By the end of the year, you will definitely be more sustainable and more harmonious. And my suggestion for you this week is simply to identify 3 to 5 imperfect passions. I think it's important that you're not just focusing on one. That's where we get ourselves into trouble. It's just saying, well, I'm going to only find pleasure in this one thing, instead of giving ourselves permission for the whole breadth of what we really care about. And to become more sustainable, I think we need to develop these imperfect passions and not dismiss them or feel badly about them. And I'll be talking about that more or less next week. I hope this has been useful to you. And again, I hope you, if you are celebrating Valentine's Day, that you have a wonderful day. And if not, I just hope you have a wonderful week anyway. And thank you for following and listening to Mindful Earthkeeper Ideas. And it's not, if you can, like the Mindful Earthkeeper Facebook page, that'd be great. Also, you can follow me on the YouTube channel, and you can also join this email list if you're not already on it. So thank you so much, and see you again next week.